Oh,
Okay, and we are live.
okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. This is the Town of Somers Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The date is May 18th, 2021. Denise, would you please take the roll?
Ms. DiPolito?
Here.
Mr. Gio?
Here.
Mr. Hardin?
Here.
Mr. Lansky?
Here.
Mr. Newman?
Here.
Chairman Canestra?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We usually start our meetings with the pledge. I'd like to do that now.
You have to lower
Thank,
that.
thank you, Paul, putting the flag up on the screen. Okay, we're going to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the
flag
of the United
United
States
States of America,
to the
and
republic
to the
republic
for which
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
God,
God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. Before we start on the agenda, I would just like to make mention to the public and everyone on the meeting screen right now. This is a public meeting. After each item is presented on the agenda, we will provide a phone number that if you'd like to call in and comment in regard to the applications, you are welcome to do so. Okay, so we're going to go right into the agenda. The first item this evening is that of John and Carmen Carway. This is an application for the renewal of a special exception use permit for an existing accessory apartment attached to an existing one-family dwelling in an R40 residential district at 8 Old Croton Falls Road in Somers. Is someone here? I believe this is Carway is on the line.
Yes,
Okay. So Mrs. Carway, you were with us before. I know we've had a couple of technical problems in getting you back online with us, but the issue at hand, I believe, was there was a question as to the accessory apartment, its size, and then there was also a question as to if the proper building approvals had been completed. Can you tell me where we stand on this application at this point in time?
well, I had an architect, an electrician, and they came and they did whatever was supposed to be done. And Mr. Thomas came over and checked everything out, and it seems to be okay.
Yeah. So maybe it's time to go to Tom. Tom Tuma is our building inspector. Tom, could you just fill us in on where you believe we stand in regard to this application?
Yes, the Carways received the building permit after submitting proper documentation. They took care of what they had to do with the electrical. I got certifications from the architect in addition to my personal observations, and subsequently received the CO for the alteration that took place.
I guess there was a question regarding the archway. Was it structurally sound? But I guess that had been signed off by the architect, and we seem to be in good shape at this point in time.
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay. So is the only outstanding variance that the applicant is asking for is a square footage variance? Because it looks like the plans I see here that this accessory apartment is 858 square feet, where the town limits it to 800 square feet. Is that the only variance in play right now?
Yeah, in conjunction with the renewal, it was picked up on that they increased the square footage with the alteration that took place. And that's the only outstanding issue, that it's a renewal, however, with a modification of the additional square footage.
Thank you.
Other questions from board members? Any inquiries of the applicant?
Are we approving two things? We're approving the variance for the square footage and then approving the renewal application?
Yes, I'm gonna need two motions.
I have no other questions.
Neither do I.
Tom and Denise, I think we've spoken about this before. There haven't been any complaints or issues regarding this apartment with the neighbors of any kind?
No.
Okay.
That's correct, Don.
Okay. Okay, does the applicant have anything further that she would like to offer at this point in time?
Not really.
No, okay. Not necessary. I just want to make sure I'm giving you a full chance to speak. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Maybe we should take this out to the public. Paul, if you could just put up the phone numbers that the public could call in on, if anybody wishes to speak in regard to this, whether you're on the meeting with us now or you'd like to call in, you can call in using one of the numbers here, then enter the ID number, and then you can come on with us and speak to us if you have any questions or concerns or comments.
I did let a few people in with some phone numbers, so if you are here already, please state your name and the question.
Anybody on the on the Zoom meeting right now have a question or comment in regard to this application? No? Okay.
No.
Okay. And Paul, we're not getting any phone calls in, anybody else additional coming on?
No, not as of now, no.
Okay. Okay, I think we can probably pull down the numbers at this point in time. Okay, any final comments or discussion any board members want to have in regard to this application? Square footage is above the required amount by 58 square feet. I think we've looked at this application pretty intently, though, and I think we're probably ready to vote. I think the first thing we have to vote on is the type of action that this is. Do we have a motion?
I'll make motion type 2.
Second.
Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Hardin,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye.
Thank you.
And Denise, you had mentioned that you thought we should make 2 motions in regard to this, one for the square footage and then for the accessory apartment. You don't think we can combine them into one motion?
No, because I generate 2 very different resolutions for a variance. I'll do one for the variance and one for the special exception. The special exception use permit is only for the apartment renewal. It can't include a variance.
Okay, okay. So yeah, let's do this, do it right. Okay, do we have a motion as to, because if we don't grant the square footage motion, we can't grant the accessory apartment. So do we have a motion in regard to the variant that the proposed apartment is 58 square feet larger than what the code allows?
I'll make a motion to grant a variance allowing the footage of 358.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Hardin,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, yes.
Do we have, we're not quite done yet. Just give us one moment, ma'am. Do we
Okay.
have a motion to grant the special exception use permit for this accessory apartment?
I move that we grant the special exception usage for this apartment.
Second.
Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Hardin,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye.
Okay, you're all set.
All right, Mrs. Carmen, I'm sorry, Mrs. Carway, your application has been granted. Keep in mind the permit is for 7 years. After that period of time, you have to come back for renewal.
Right.
Okay? All right.
And I should be hearing from Denise for, I think there's a permit that I'm supposed to renew also, right?
Yes, I'll be back in touch with you at some point, Mrs. Carway.
Very good.
Thank you.
Good night, Mrs. Carway.
Thank you. Good night now.
Good
Thank
night.
you, everyone. Good night.
You're welcome.
Night.
Okay, we're going to go on now to the second item on the agenda. This is the application of Romanen and Andrea Luki. Please excuse me if I'm not pronouncing the names correctly.
Okay.
This is an application for the renewal of a special exception use permit as new owners for an existing accessory apartment in a detached structure to an existing one-family dwelling in an R80 residential district at 20 South Lane, Katona. Is there someone here to represent the applicant this evening?
Yeah, I'm here. Andrea.
Okay, and so you are Ms. Andrea Luki, and you reside at 20 South Lane, Katona?
That's correct.
Okay. Could you briefly describe your application for us? Is this just simply a renewal of a accessory apartment permit?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Can you tell me how many people you expect to reside in the apartment?
Well, to be honest, I don't know at this point, but what I would like to in the future, when I do want to rent it, is just 2.
Okay. Denise and Tom, have there been any complaints regarding this property or this apartment?
No.
There have been none.
Okay. And Tom, have you been out to visit this apartment?
I have.
Okay. I'm looking at a couple of plans here for, it looks like a first floor and possibly second floor. Is this the entire apartment?
Are you
Yes.
asking me, the applicant?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not really asking you, Tom. I see 2 plans here. I just want to make sure that, because, just looking at the plans, it looked like it could be in excess of 800 square feet here.
So this is a detached structure that's been on this property for many, 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 many years. It was grandfathered in. And the previous owner just came before us maybe about 2 years ago, and the house has been now sold to the Lukis. So what exists is always what's been there, and that special exception use permit has been renewed several times over the years.
Now, I will definitely vouch for that because I was a neighbor of I believe, the original owners, the Muellers. Andrea, what I would
Yeah.
like to do, if all possible, if you'd like to know a little history of South Lane, you can reach out to Denise, if Denise would be kind enough to give you my cell number. I can give you some history of South Lane.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does the applicant know what the square footage of the apartment is?
No, I don't.
Can we tell from the plans?
Yeah, I gotta get my calculator.
Yeah, I mean, just from the plans, this looks like a very large apartment. It's also 2 bedrooms, 2 floors. I guess, do we know, or Tom, Denise, that this is pre-existing to the current code?
It's as per originally approved, the
Okay.
apartment, identically.
So if we approved it in the past, it has to either be pre-existing non-conforming or, or not significantly over the 800 square feet. Because I'm just looking at this apartment and it looks like there's, 2 bedrooms with a fairly large dressing and closet area, a living room, a dining room, a bath, and a kitchen. So it's, yeah, I mean, this is, I'm guessing the square footage is going to be quite over the 800. I mean, this would probably not be something that we would currently approve if this was a first-time application.
What makes this an accessory apartment versus a multifamily building?
The special exception use permit.
And it has to meet certain parameters, one of those being less than 800 or less square feet. And usually what makes it an accessory apartment, at least my understanding, is when you have a kitchen,
Yeah, you need means for bathing, sleeping, living, and cooking.
I know a lot of codes are trying working to get rid of having more than one house on a property? Is that what makes this, requires this to be an accessory use apartment?
Yes,
These are not, these are single-family zoned with the option to get an accessory apartment if it meets these tight parameters. But yeah, this is not multifamily zoning.
Well, I know, but if it predates all the zoning, then that's what I was trying to, that's what I was trying to understand. Because it looks like it's an old place.
Well, I can truly say it's been there since 1950, if not longer.
Oh,
This has to predate. That's the only way something this size. could
Yeah.
have been approved.
yeah, we have a handful of apartments in this kind of, they're not in the house, they're not in the basement, they're in separate detached. We had one not too long, last year, we had actually 2 or 3 of them. And they've been, they all predate zoning, and that's how they were handled.
Okay. But wouldn't they just be existing 2 families?
No. No, Tommy,
The
help
code
me
permits
here.
To have,
This zone doesn't support multifamily.
No, I know.
no, but our code permits an accessory apartment and an accessory structure, provided it meets certain criteria. I think the history of this is a very confusing one. I believe the apartment was once in the other building that was on the property, and then they went before the zoning board, and they got the apartment relocated to the location that it's currently.
So the apartment in the house now, or is it in the freestanding building, the long building?
It's in the building in the front, the smaller building.
The original farmhouse?
Which, yes.
Okay. Because the cottage in the back used to be rented, and the Muellers used to live in the main house.
As of
Which-
late, the property was owned for many, many years by the Vermeeshes.
This is true too, but I'm going
Yeah.
back to probably the 40s and the 50s.
So we don't have more than one family living here and an accessory apartment. We don't have somebody else living in another cottage or something on the property, do we?
No,
no.
Okay. This accessory apartment also has a basement below, I guess?
Yes.
Okay. Is that a finished basement or not?
No, no,
Okay.
it's not finished. It's just basically for storage.
Okay.
It houses mechanical equipment as well.
Okay.
Coming up with roughly a little over 900 square feet for what's on the drawing here.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tom, for doing that. Yeah. So it's not as bad as I thought. I thought you were going to come up with like 11 or 1200 here. So, okay. Any other questions or comments amongst the board or the applicant before we take this out to the public?
Is there a request for a variance on the size? Are we going to do that?
no, because it's always been that size. They probably did that when they got their very first special exception use permit.
Okay.
Pre-existing, so it has to have the proper, some type of approval in place. One would think, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a renewal.
Renewal, so I assume it got here legitimately.
Yes.
Okay,
Slight correction, about a little over 1,000 square feet, not 900.
a little over 1,000, okay. All right, so we're going to take this out to the public right now. Anybody who wishes to speak in regard to this application, whether you're on the line with us now or wish to call in, please do so at this time. Use one of the numbers on the screen and then enter the Zoom meeting ID number, and that'll bring you right into the meeting with us. We'll leave it open for about a minute here and see if anybody has any comments. Does anybody on the line with us now have any comments in regard to this application? Anybody wish to speak?
And there's nobody trying to get in as of now, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Paul. All right, so let's go back to the meeting then. Any final comments from the applicant at this point in time?
No, thank you. No.
Okay. Any final comments or questions from board members before we go to a vote?
No, not at this time.
Nope. Okay. All right, do we have a motion as to the type of action?
Type 2?
Second,
Was that you, Bill?
yep,
Thank you. Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Hardin,
aye,
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye.
Thank you.
Can we have a motion whether we're going to grant the renewal of the special exception use permit? Or deny it?
I'll make
I'll
a
make a
motion to grant the applicant.
second,
Ms. DiPolito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Hardin,
aye,
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye. Okay, congratulations, Ms. Lukey. Your application has been granted.
Thank you so much.
No problem. The permit is for
I really
7
appreciate
years.
it.
And after that point in time, you'll have to come back and visit us for renewal once again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'll be in touch, okay?
Thanks, Denise. I appreciate
You're-
it always. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is that of Christine Crucius Smith. This is an application for an area variance for lot coverage for both the principal building additions and accessory improvements to an existing one-family dwelling in an R40 residential district at 21 Linway Lane in Somers. Is there someone here to represent the applicant?
Yes, sir. David Tetro, architect, and the homeowner is on as well.
All
Okay,
right, before we go any further, Chairman, I'd like to recuse myself from this applicant.
sure. Mr. Gio is going to recuse himself. Please keep in mind for approval or denial, there has to be 4 votes in either direction for this application to either be approved or denied. Okay, so sir, could you briefly describe the application before us? I know you provided us with a topographical survey and plans.
Yes, let me see what I have here.
You could just tell me what the applicant is doing
Sure.
and the variances requested here.
Okay. So we were before the board about, I think, 2 summers ago for a similar addition, but a larger scope. And because of family events and finances and that sort of thing, the project changed its scope. So we were granted a variance for a 3-car addition and a 3-car garage addition and volume added and footprint added of the house. Because it changed, what we ended up doing was putting the 3-car garage in the back of the house and limiting the amount of volume that we've added to the house. But in doing so, we've ended up changing the zoning numbers, such as ground coverage, or lot coverage. So what we have is the original, and actually the driveway's still here. The original addition was coming to the right side of the house, and we were going to remove the existing driveway and move the driveway to the right side of the house with the addition. Now what we're doing is we're taking the existing driveway, extending it along the side of the house on the left side, and putting the additions in the back. Part of the reason why we were doing this was because the addition was kind of massive to the site, being that the house is on top of a hill. It also created kind of a steep entrance into the garage from the street because of the grade change. Also, there was a lot of interior alteration work that needed to happen in order for the garage to work, because the garage was at a lower elevation than the first floor of the house by a lot, by maybe 4 feet. So we had a lot of stairs, a lot of level changes. We had to move bedrooms across the other side of the house, etc. So what we've done was we've taken the garage, 3-car garage, and tucked it right behind the house. A dining room addition off to the rear of the house, which we were wrapping with a deck. So the zoning values that we're looking at are, let's see, can I move this? Okay. We have an existing existing lot coverage of 6,226 square feet, which we are permitted. Where is the permitted number? Let's see. Actually, we don't have an allowable for that.
Yeah, I see it's blank there, yes.
Yeah, so basically we went from 6,226 to 9,773 due to the expansion of the driveway to get to the garage, due to the addition of the deck and the addition of the dining room addition. So in our previous application, we kind of stayed around the total lot coverage that we have now, because we removed the long driveway coming up to the house and replaced it with that kind of shorter, stubbier garage to the driveway to the right. So let's see, what do we have? All right, so sorry. So this is the existing plan of the house is here. Originally, the garage was coming off to the right. So now it's just coming off the back with the driveway coming along the left side of the house. And a dining room addition off to the back, and then a wraparound deck. So because of the unique situation of this particular property and the excess of the existing lot coverage, we kind of were handcuffed into adding close to 3,000 more, or a little over 3,000 more, because of the driveway and this sort of thing. So that's why we're here for the variance. Now, when we were granted the variance before, we were still over the allowables, but not by, we actually kind of reduced a little bit of the existing. But we were granted the variance because of the large, not because of, but we were granted a variance of the larger project. This project cuts down the amount of construction, the size of the addition, et cetera. It's just because of the existing driveway that's giving us such a high ground lot coverage.
I think knowing the allowable coverage is important, because if we're going to grant a variance, we would know how much of a variance we're granting here.
Well, see, the thing is that when we went through with this application, we have a principal lot coverage of 2,172 square feet, which is just over 5%. We were permitted 6%, and this is the principal building.
Right.
When we're done with the construction, the principal building is jumping up to almost 7.5%, which isn't the tremendous. We don't have an allowable site coverage number, and I'm not sure if Tom can or someone can step in and let us know what it is. There was nothing that we were able to find in the code that gave us what our allowable site coverage number was or is. What we do have is the allowable for the principal building and the accessory building, but not necessarily for the impervious items such as the deck and the driveway.
Tom, question for you. Do you know what the overall lot coverage would be for a lot like this?
Well, it comes down to the definition, which I haven't been able to find.
It's not there.
The zoning is R40, and the principal structure is allowed to occupy 6% of the lot. So it'd be 6% of 42,183 square feet. My interpretation of the zoning code is off-street parking is required. So paved surfaces, actually drives, paved or unpaved, are considered lot coverage. So it's my interpretation that the driveway is required for the principal structure, so that would be incorporated in the principal lot coverage calculation.
Huh.
Okay. And Tom, would the deck also be considered lot coverage?
Yeah, it would be considered lot coverage. Yep, it's decks are in there with drives, and again, I would consider a deck, being it attached to the principal dwelling, part of the principal lot coverage calculation.
Eric, can you tell me how many feet the deck sits off the ground?
Yes. It's about 3 steps. We're talking maximum of 2 feet.
Okay, I'm just curious. Was there any thought of putting a patio in as opposed to a deck?
Well, there's a patio there now that we're removing, and one of the things that the owner wanted to do is to kind of like avoid stepping down out of the house onto the kind of surface that they would have some seating and the barbecue grill and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we kept it at the level of the house.
Okay.
Can I ask about the definition? I'm struggling with it. Principal building, 6%. I don't understand why the driveway and walkways and all that would be the principal building. I heard what Tommy said, but it doesn't make sense to me. Am I just off base? What am I missing?
Well, if you look through the code and you look up lot coverage, it steers you to site coverage, which defines decks, access drives, etc., as being considered synonymous with the two.
Okay, I see site coverage. There is no lot coverage in the code, right? The lot coverage is not a defined term. Principal building and accessory building are defined. A principal building which is conducted the principal use of the lot on which it is situated. So we know what that is. That doesn't sound, that's the building itself, and a driveway wouldn't be a building. Site coverage is a totally different thing. Because if you were talking about site coverage, you would include accessory building as well. That would be under site coverage. So you would have 6 and 3. So you'd have 9. And I'm not trying to quibble. I just I don't see how that would be. If I had written this code, it's not how I would have intended it to be interpreted. If you can have 9% without just the buildings, you would think there would be lot coverage would be something different. Or there would be a higher, or the code would have a higher site coverage number.
I can tell you in comparison to some neighboring municipalities, our code is very restrictive in the percentage of that it permits.
Yeah, a 2,530 square feet the 6% number on an acre lot, that doesn't make any sense. If you're including driveways, this house as an example has to get to the road. You can have a driveway which covers that.
I hear it weekly, if not more often than that.
In fact, this driveway is twice what we're saying the lot coverage is. I would ask the other zoning board people to look at this definition, because I'm assuming, Tommy, you're going off of what an earlier board looked at and said and did. But I'm looking at this code and I don't see that that's a logical conclusion. And I know you inherit what earlier boards did, but it doesn't make any sense for this to be, you have over an acre and you can't even put a driveway in.
But we don't rewrite the law, we only interpret it.
Oh, I know, but my question is not rewriting. My question is interpreting. So I see this code saying principal building 6%, and I see principal building being an actual building. So I don't see a driveway in that definition. And so I'm certainly not asking us to rewrite the code. But frankly, I don't see. I understand how an earlier board might have made the leap, but this is not what I see in other boards. It's not how I see this interpreted in other places. I spend some of my practice appearing in front of other boards. I've been in front of 50 or 60, at least 60 boards, and I don't see this done like this. I don't see an acre property where you only have 2,000 square feet that you can do for everything. So that's my question to the other board members is, can we look at these code definitions? And I know that's not necessarily, this applicant was confused by this and left it blank because it probably didn't make sense to him. And so he just left it blank and said, my job is just to get a variance here. And we can just, approve this variance. But frankly, I struggle with approving the variance because I think, I don't think that's the way to interpret our code.
The applicants before you, based on my denial of the application, it could be either for a variance or to challenge my interpretation of the zoning ordinance.
Well, yeah, well, Tom, I mean, I think we had this conversation 2 years ago about it, and I know
we did.
There was kind of some back and forth about what was considered the definition, and that a driveway is not necessarily a structure or a principal structure or that kind of thing. I mean, obviously, we're at the mercy of the interpretation in terms of that, but it's one of those things that it was unclear. It was left blank because there really is there is site coverage in the zoning code in terms of the table, but there's no definition of what it was. And that's pretty much why we had left it alone.
Well, either way with the interpretation, we would still, even if we did take out the driveway, a variance would still be needed here because he's at 7.52% just for the principal structure.
Oh, yes, correct. So whether the interpretation includes the walkways and driveways or not, either way. I'm sorry,
Bart, you're falling out there. Oh, I think he's freezing.
We lost him.
Bart, can you try and move locations, please, if you're on a Wi-Fi connection? Okay, Bart, please try it again.
Yep, can you hear me?
We can hear you
Can you hear
now,
me now?
Bart. Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. My computer's over to another Wi-Fi without me.
Oh, you're dropping out again,
You're
Bart.
still garbled.
Okay, so I'm sorry. My question was, we're at 7.5%. Is that how it's calculated?
Correct. We are 1.52% over the permitted principal lot coverage if we look at just the principal building.
Mr. Tetro, a question I have for you also, for where you have lot cover access, I assume that's what you're talking about with the driveway. Current is only 96 square feet? That seems awfully low to me.
There's an accessory shed on the property.
Oh, is that what we're
That's
talking
what that
about?
is. It's supposed to be accessory, but I cut it short.
Oh, okay. So this is for a shed that's on the property.
Just the lot coverage, for the lot coverage accessory, we're allowed 1,200 square feet for it. We currently have 96 square feet. We're not looking for a variance for an accessory structure.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, we could do a variance to accommodate the square footage which this applicant is proposing.
You're breaking up again.
And
Hey, Bart, if you can hear me, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You have to try and switch locations, please.
Yeah, Bart, you're coming in totally garbled. We can't hear you.
Bart, if you can copy us, can you please try and connect another way or call in? Okay, I guess we'll hang on for him to reconnect.
Hey, Tom, what is the do you happen to know the section of the code that leads you to interpret driveways as included?
I don't have it in front of me. I don't know off the top of my head. It's off-street parking.
Okay.
It regulates how much off-street parking is required.
Paul, is Bart trying to get back on with us?
I got him.
You got him?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm letting him in.
Okay. Hello, Bart, are you there?
yeah, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, you really became garbled. We couldn't hear the whole last part of your conversation. Maybe you could just repeat for us.
Sorry about that. All I'm saying is we can approve this application based upon the square footages, and a variance without putting a number on it and do the definitions a later time. I don't think the way this has been interpreted is what the writers of the code intended. And it's not the way it's very unusual for you to put in a percent number for principal building and a percent number for accessory building, and then say that that's site coverage, that's everything. So it would push people to build separate, to take the garage and move it 1 foot away from the thing so he could have an additional 3%. Like it kind of creates, if that's the interpretation, it creates a whole set of weird activity. And it's just not the way I would imagine that a writer would would want it to be. Though that was not intended to be the total lot coverage or site coverage. I don't think that 6% or 3% number. So I don't know if anyone has different opinions.
Okay.
Well, it seems that everyone else anyway has been abiding by this code that we have now, interpreted the way we're interpreting the code. And I remember this particular lot and this particular variance from 2 years ago.
It's because people take the path of least resistance. Doesn't mean we're doing it right.
No, I understand what you're saying. What you're saying makes reasonable sense, but they didn't write the law that way. They wrote it as it is.
Oh, but I think they did. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying I think that's how they wrote the law. At some point in time, the interpretation got.
I can't understand what you're saying.
Yeah, Bart, you're breaking up again. We can't hear anything.
I'll call.
All right, just call in.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that based on what Bart is saying, I tend to agree. So we don't have to make a ruling. We could just approve the variance. We don't have to make a ruling on the interpretation right now, but that would be something of concern going forward. I want to ask a few questions to understand a little bit better.
I honestly think there'll be a lot of people who will come in and want a variance similar to this if we do this variance. I understand the logic of what Bart is saying. It makes good sense, but that's not the way the law was written, apparently.
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying that we should. I was saying that we could, just in terms of logistical options here. I'm not saying we should. I'm just saying we could.
We can do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, over the many years that I've been on the board, I haven't seen a lot of these lot coverages for single-family residential dwellings. Just really haven't seen a lot of it. So it really hasn't been an issue. And I don't know because maybe it hasn't been noticed or it just doesn't exist. I don't know.
I don't know either. I know that if we approve this variance, we'd be approving a rather significant variance from the existing law the way it's written.
Yes, I agree with that, Bill.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Melissa?
No, I said I agree with Bill and what he just said, that this is a large variance, and I don't know, is there a lesser way to go about this?
Well, originally, the design that we came up with, like I said, had reduced it by only a couple of hundred. We were still roughly around, I would say, the low 6,000s in it. But like I said, with the way that the design worked out and the amount of construction that was necessary, we had to kind of switch gears, and we tried to make the addition as least of an impact to the neighbors due to its size. And unfortunately, the owner was given all of this coverage already when he had the house. So we're trying to, play nice and everything, but we're doing what we kind of have to do in order to get the addition to work.
It needs to be a three car.
I think you did a good job, but it still means that you're asking for a significant variance. I'm not saying we shouldn't give the variance. I'm saying that we should know what we're doing when we give the variance. That's all.
Oh, understood. And, you know, I don't like to try to overstep our bounds, you know, on what we're asking for.
Sure.
We're not trying to take advantage of a zoning variance here.
Right.
I'm sorry, Melissa, you mentioned about a 3-car garage. Due to the 2 kids in the house being able to drive now and everything, he kind of wants to just be able to get the vehicles off of the driveway and into something covered.
Sure.
Hey, David, this is Michael. If I could just step in and just say, we actually have a total of 8 children. Well, thankfully, they are not all living at the house. There are times when
I had a panic attack there for a second.
They are lovely children, but part of the reason that we need the added garage space is because when they do come after COVID, of course, there's just not enough ample space when they're there for the weekends or we're here for a holiday. And unfortunately, in many cases, we've been forced to have to put the cars on the side of the yard, and I don't think that is attractive to our neighbors, which is, of course, one of the other reasons why we moved the garage, which would have been a much larger structure, which I think it was 60 by 60, so it was a really large structure, from the right side of the house to the left side, basically facing the back, so that we could actually have a more pleasant view for our neighbors. And have less cars when the entire family arrives. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in there.
Thank you.
I have a question for the building inspector. Tom, if the driveway went to a gravel driveway, does it then come out of the lot coverage question?
No, the code refers to access drive, whether paved or unpaved.
Okay. And what about with the deck? If that went to a patio, is that still considered lot coverage, or is that not part of the calculation then? Just curious.
I would say it does, depending on the material it's made of. You know, I disagree with the code calling decks impervious. Decks don't hold water. They have spacing in their floorboards, and they allow the water to go through them. But it's written in their decks are considered coverage. So I would say that if it were a patio or a deck, it's still, my interpretation would impact the lot coverage.
Okay, we're still in the same boat. Okay, I just wanted to know what the options were here, if there were any. Okay.
Can we possibly have do we have an attorney on that we can connect with?
Well, we have
the board?
we have access to town council, who we can ask for an opinion in regard to the code. And maybe that's something the board would like to do before we render a decision.
Because lot coverage in the adjoining towns, for instance, Southeast, 20%, 25%, 30%. Right? Town of Carmel, I'm just looking things up as we speak. 15% for residential. And I bet you if I go through every code around us, nobody's at 6%. Nobody's even close to it.
I've heard that
I don't think that was the intention of the code. And
But
so
the problem we have is we're, a strict percentage, we're stuck with it. Now, of course, I certainly understand the interpretation issue is, should the driveway or the deck be involved? Well, that's a different question. But, kind of.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Principal building is 6%. That's for the actual structure. It's a building.
Right.
It's not the driveway.
And we may very well give an interpretation like that, or maybe talk to town council and see what town council has to say. I'd be willing to take it to town council and see what they advise on that. Even if it is those 6%, this property will still need a variance because it's 7% and change coverage, which is still small, but that's what the code says. Yeah.
But it's not 3 times it's not 3 times the allowable. That's the thing is, it's one thing to give a variance of 10%, 20%, or 30%, but to give a variance of 300% is not normal.
Right.
And I just know from working in other towns that nobody has a lot coverage of 5% or 6%. Like nobody.
Yes, but what you're arguing is for a rewrite of the zoning laws in town.
No, just to
Because
interpret it properly.
we only interpret the law. We don't write the law. We're not law writers. We're law interpreters. And you're asking us to interpret the law by referring to the coverage allowed in the towns around us. But as far as that's concerned, we only work for Somers. And the only law we have to consider is the Somers law. And this is a very uncomfortable conversation for me to have. Because I think that you're right. I think that the coverage should be changed, but that requires a change in the zoning law that can only be done when the town decides to revise their zoning laws.
I'm only looking at the interpretation. I'm not looking to rewrite the law. I'm just saying a principal building's a building. It's not a driveway.
Bart, what section are you looking at for the percentages in our code?
I was looking at the actual schedule, the zoning schedule.
Yeah, see, one of the head scratchers with this whole thing is that and it's just an observation, so don't take this as an attack on anybody or anything, but the accessory building is half of what would be permitted for the principal building that would include the building and the driveways and all that themselves together. It does seem like there was either something in the code that was missed or not missed by us reviewing the code, but in terms of it being written or in terms of its interpretation. It would seem that a 6% coverage for building and driveway and walkways is one thing, and then to say that you can have an accessory building that's only that's allowed to be as much as half of that. It does seem like there's a gap in how this was written, because I mean, when we first did this, Tom and I were scratching our head about it, and it was like kind of an odd thing to interpret. So we were like, okay, well, we'll just put the whole entire thing on the drawings as the 6,000 plus square feet, and then we'll just talk to the zoning board about it.
Well, I thought that Bart brought up a very interesting point in that if the garage was set, let's say 2 or 3 feet away from the main house, it wasn't attached, would it be considered an accessory structure? And then
of course
we'd be done. It would work, which seems.
Yes and no. Yes and no, because then we'd be dealing with side yard setbacks and some other, we were kind of looking at that as well.
Right now, and I'm not necessarily saying to do that, but it just seems odd to me that if you take the garage and set it off 2 or 3 feet from the main house, then you don't need a variance, assuming you meet the setbacks. I'm just saying that just seems odd in that just because the garage is attached, why would it then need a variance, where if it was not attached, it would not need a variance? You know, then you wouldn't need a variance for the property. You'd be meeting the coverage, right? I mean, is that, it's a very odd thing to me. It's non-logical, but.
Well, that would only be, that would only affect the 7.5% that we were talking about. It wouldn't change the entire lot coverage of the 9,000 square feet that we're discussing right now.
I understand that, but with the main building, you have 3%. My understanding is the accessory structure could be 3%.
Correct, correct.
Total
No,
9%, and your current coverage for everything is like 7.5%. So it seems like you would be under. It doesn't seem logical to me to some degree to set it off as a separate building.
The schedule clearly says principal building, accessory building. It doesn't say that it includes everything else. And there's no definition of lot coverage in the code. It somewhere this interpretation came up, adding that stuff as a restrictive interpretation, but that's not what this schedule says. A principal building and an accessory building, those are defined terms. We have those. You get 6% for a principal building, you get 3% for an accessory building. Driveways aren't in there.
So I have a question then. Has this lot coverage number that we're discussing come up on other applications? I'm not talking about the 6% or 3%. I'm talking about like the gross lot coverage number that we were looking at from the 6,000 to the 9,000. Is this something that
I haven't recalled a lot of applications like this, maybe because they haven't gone above the lot coverage percentage, or maybe it hasn't been looked at as closely, but I haven't seen a lot of them.
Or it may have been interpreted differently. I don't know.
Right. I mean, I think about it more with commercials. Like I remember when St. Joseph Church was built on the overall property, a huge property, but it's where Kennedy Catholic High School is. They were building a new church and they were slightly over the lot coverage. I remember that, but it was a huge piece of property. So I remember that instance, but I can't say I remember a lot of residential buildings having this kind of a discussion about. I just don't.
Well, I was more asking about if this number shows up on the tables for the applications. That line item that I have at the bottom of the table, is that on every application that comes through the board?
I have seen that on a lot of applications. I couldn't tell you every one, but a lot of times that type of a chart or grid is provided, you know, saying for setbacks, property setbacks, you know, so I have seen a lot of that. And I'm sure lot coverage was in them. You know, whether
I'm
every
sure too.
application-
I've
Yeah.
seen them too.
Yeah, I do recall seeing them, but
It's reviewed whether it's in there or not. It is reviewed.
yeah. So if the building inspector is reviewing it when an application comes before him, you know, whether it's in there or not, it's still being reviewed, so.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm not by any means
Right.
criticizing Tom or anything. Please don't understand, don't interpret.
No, I
it.
understand that. You know, but a lot of times too, instead of an R40, we might be looking at an R80 or R120. So they're much larger lots. So, you know, coverage isn't an issue here. We have some R10 districts, you know, so
Sure.
it's different for each size property. Okay, so where are we going to go from here? Melissa, what's your interpretation of this? What do you think about this?
I think this is really interesting. I'm looking at the code as we're talking about this, and the definition section in the zoning, there is no definition of lot coverage. There's site coverage, but lot coverage is omitted, and I'm not jumping to the conclusion that they're interchangeable. So I do see Bart's point of view that there is an omission. There is this area that's left for us to just fill in, and I don't know that it's fair to assume that decks and off-street parking and driveways fall within lot coverage. It's within site coverage, but I don't know that they're interchangeable.
What would the difference be between site coverage and lot coverage? I'm trying to think.
Our code doesn't define lot coverage.
I know we're our own town, but just for comparison's sake, town of Bedford, 1 acre zoning, you get 10% for your building and you get 20% for your impervious surfaces. That's more something I see in terms of you get 20-something% in Southeast. No, I can't imagine that the actual interpretation is 5% and you got to put all your driveways in it, because I don't think anyone's house on this board would meet that. I don't think we're trying to say that everybody's house is outside the code.
I mean, if this board makes the decision that driveways and decks are included in that 6%, you know, then we got to apply that to everybody. We've got to be, you know, obviously consistent here. So maybe we do need an interpretation from town council, get independent legal opinion, in regard to this. I know we have some attorneys on the board who are giving their opinion.
I think I would like to do that to be consistent. It's not that I'm opposed or saying that we're opposed to this application per se, but before we open the door of granting these size variances as a way around our code's coverage, I'd like to know exactly or have a consistent board interpretation of what we're taking into account for coverage.
Right. So maybe we should go to town council, ask for an opinion. Town board obviously can modify the code if they, talk to town council or us, and there seems to be an issue here or a question that can always be done. But then the issue comes up, what are we going to do with the applicant this evening? Do we want to put this off to next meeting and get town council's opinion before we proceed?
I think so. I
What do you
mean,
have, board?
before we start writing laws here, I think we should find out exactly where we stand from a legal point of view. And I agree with Melissa. I'm uncomfortable sitting here rewriting the law because Bart is correct in his analysis. But I'm wondering do we want to rewrite laws? Is that what we're trying to do?
Well, obviously not, we're
No,
not.
but I think we need to understand how to apply it, and that comes in the definition.
I think you're right.
So Denise, do the other board members agree that maybe we should go to town council and get an opinion on this? Arnie,
Yes.
Tom? Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So Denise, I think we should probably reach out to, I believe probably Jerry Riley.
Yes.
And I think, we can let town board know we're doing that also, but I think we should get some kind of an interpretation as to, this issue regarding lot coverage or site coverage, the difference, and whether driveways, patios, decks should be considered as with the principal structure or not. So I think that's our starting point. And, even if the town of Somers is more restrictive by a significant amount than other towns, well, that's what our code says. So then it's up to the town board if they want to change that or not.
Right.
And then we have to decide whether we're willing to give a variance for the code as we have it, right. And I agree with you, Bill. We're not in the business of rewriting the law here. That's not what we do. We're not lawmakers here. We're interpreting the code, granting reasonable variances, asking for interpretations when necessary or making those interpretations, that's what we do. So I think, are we also in agreement then as a board that we really have to put this application off for a month just to kind of see where we're at?
Well, I'm worried about that guy with 8 kids.
Hey, you should be worried. They're really pretty big kids too. Hey, let me ask you a question. This is the homeowner. What are the alternatives here? And let me just sort of share with you some of the complications. As you guys realize, COVID has created all sorts of issues for supply chain, right? So a piece of plywood that used to cost $12.95 is now costing $75. So for every week and month that goes by, the cost of the construction of this build out becomes greater and greater. And while I do appreciate and certainly understand your concern and as it relates to the law, I'd like to see what are the other options that we have so that we can get this thing moving forward. Because once we lose our window with our contractor, our siding, our windows, our doors, we may very well lose the opportunity to do this again until next year. Okay. So while I appreciate what you're trying to do, there are some factors that are just not normal factors that we have to contend with as it relates to our contractors, our supply. So what are our options here as opposed to putting this off a month? what can we do?
Well, I think the issue at hand here is that the variance, as some interpret the code, is significant. And some interpret the code a different way. And it's not clear. And the code is very different from other towns, but to me, that's somewhat a shame, but also irrelevant because we have to follow our zoning code. So,
But you do realize that 2 years ago, you essentially gave us the approval for this when the garage was on the opposite side of the house, albeit we were going to be removing some of the pervious surface, with that being the garage, that being the driveway. But we were very close to where we are now. So, I don't mean to, hold your feet to the fire, but I am just trying to understand why it is more complicated now than it was before. Well, it's specifically that issue. You were removing a large section of driveway and replacing it with a much shorter one. And that's why that's why you were able to get the variance that way. The way the code has been interpreted to this point includes driveways. So this plan has a much larger driveway than the last plan. So that's the problem we have.
So
if I move the garage back 3 feet from the house, does the problem go away?
It does not, because it has to be separated by a minimum of 10 feet or half the height of the adjacent structure as a minimum, whichever is more restrictive.
And then you're going to be coming back and asking us for side offsets.
Or a tunnel.
For that.
A tunnel.
A tunnel.
That's in the zoning schedule.
So,
Well,
so
at
I
least
think
that doesn't imply plywood.
I think what we're trying to do is, I think, based on where we are right now, it would seem likely that this request would be denied. So rather than do that, we're trying to find a way to possibly get some clarification on this interpretation about driveways so that this could be granted. So we are working, I think we're all working to try to make this a positive outcome for everybody. I'm just not sure if we were forced to do it tonight, I don't know that it would be.
If you're talking about hypotheticals, hypothetically, the town board could decide that driveways, for instance, and perhaps decks need not be included in coverage when we're calculating that.
Bill,
the
building inspector is the first interpreter, and then we interpret the code. And so we're going to get advice from legal counsel on our interpretation. But it's not the town. The town board can modify the zoning code and put in definitions. But frankly, in terms of sequence, we can try to meet earlier. We can try to get a quicker response from our attorneys. We can try to be as reactive as possible and understand that it's a special time for this applicant and try to line things up as quickly as possible and ask our attorney to give a quick response. And we could even probably draft something or have a vote based upon some definition. But we still need to, this board still needs to have a definition and be an interpretation of the code. And it doesn't sound like we're ready to do that as a board. So without hearing from our town attorney. So that kind of leaves us with either voting on this existing application or putting it over to sometime in the future, the next meeting, or even holding a special meeting or doing something else to entertain applicant.
Right.
Just keep in mind, any meeting we have, it has to be open to the public. It has to be noticed. So there's a lot of things that go on with that. And the important thing here is that we try to be consistent in our application, treat everybody equally. So once we make a decision on this applicant, that same type of decision should be made on all applicants going forward. So I don't think we can just quickly make, I feel bad for the applicant a little bit here, but I don't think we can just hurry this application and then set forth a precedent that, is maybe an improper or inaccurate interpretation. So.
Well, I have one last question, and David, this might require your assistance on. If we reduce the garage down to 2
and I guess we would just jettison one of the kids. But if we reduce the garage down to 2, what's the percentage that we're over at that point? And is it more palatable for you if we do that? And also in the back deck that we were planning on using as an extension, if maybe there's something we can do to redesign on the interior of the house, or maybe even go up. I don't really know.
And,
But
and just, sir, just one thing, possibly a month from now, I can't guarantee it, but we might grant the application as proposed. I'm just letting you know. So.
Okay.
That's
I
a distinct,
don't
that's
know.
a distinct possibility.
Yeah, I think there's a fair chance that you might get it approved. I'm only one of 7 members of the board. You need 4 votes to carry. But there might be a possibility it might be approved. I don't know.
I want to say that I think it's as an application, I think that the architecture is well designed. I think it's a thorough application. You provided the survey and did everything you're supposed to do. I would be chagrined to say that a 300% zoning variance would set an appropriate precedent. And that's my issue, is that I've litigated some zoning cases.
Losing you again, Bart.
And you don't see that. And it takes away a lot of the authority of the board. Sorry.
Yeah, Bart,
Yeah.
you're frozen now. Sorry. We lost part of what you're saying.
I'm finished.
Right, and also this application was for a variance. It's not for an interpretation. It's not objecting to the building inspector's interpretation, so.
Oh, yeah, no, and we're not arguing with that at all. We're presenting what we were told to present, and, we were asking for the variance because of the numbers, not necessarily.
And it's important for you to realize that we're not criticizing you at all. It seems to me that you've done a very workmanlike way, very, very professional job. It's just that the code is what it is. And
No, I appreciate that. Michael, to answer your question, we're talking, removing one bay would lose about 260 square feet. So it's not
a big difference.
It's not tremendous.
No.
Well, while we're at it, let's just go ahead and get a four-car garage. Let's push the envelope here, guys.
And how about in the cell phone tower
That's
too?
not going to help you. Yeah.
And a helicopter pad and everything else you could possibly. Okay, all right. Well, let's revisit this. Listen, 30 days isn't going to kill us.
Okay.
So-
Yeah. So I think what the board is saying, that we're going to go out to town council, get an opinion on this, so at least we can quantify the variance that's being asked as to whether driveways and patios and decks are included in the square footage or not, and make sure we're reading the code correctly, maybe lot versus site coverage, anything that town council can provide to us would be very, very helpful here. And, one other thing I just want to say here also, we as zoning board members, we all live in town, okay? Whether we like the code or not is irrelevant. The code is the code, that's what we signed up for, to obey the zoning code, the law. Reasonable variances, once again, but, even if we don't like it, that's quite honestly, our opinion of not liking something is irrelevant. So we have to follow it, so.
Of course.
Right. Okay. All right. So all members, are we all in favor then of carrying this item over to next month's meeting?
Yes.
Okay. And also seeking town council's opinion in regard to this issue, so we have a better interpretation of the code, since there is some
Yes.
question here. All in
And
agreement?
also explain to the town council that it's an emergency situation.
Yeah,
we
I-
need
I'm-
I'll
We
speak to him
need
in the
an
morning.
opinion. We
I-
need
I-
opinion.
Yeah, I'm sure town council is generally very responsive, and I'm sure we'll have something well before next month's meeting. and then we can kind of go from there. So,
Do we as applicants have to do anything between now and then?
Wait,
Yeah, David, I have everything that I need. I mean, I would say right now to all of the board members, hang on to your stuff. You know, they have everything that they need, and I will contact, you know, the town attorney in the morning, and explain what's going on and get a response from him in writing. And then I will distribute that to the board members prior to the next meeting with, you know, the Smith's application.
Okay, so we don't have to generate the town council involvement. That's,
No,
no, you don't do that.
no.
We'll do it.
Yeah, you don't need to do anything at this point. And board members, I just respectfully request that you keep all of, you know, the applicant's supporting documentation.
okay.
Okay,
All right. So we're going to adjourn this matter until next month's meeting, and we'll proceed with legal counsel. All right. So thank you, sir, for your application, and hopefully we'll see you next month.
yes, thank you. And I appreciate your diligence in taking this down the road a little further for us.
I'm sorry we couldn't give you a decision tonight, but as you can see, there are just some issues that are.
No, understood. And I agree with Bart, seeing a lot of, you know, doing a lot of zoning meetings and you know, zoning tables and everything. There's some discrepancy here, and I'm glad that you guys are looking into it. And whatever the outcome is, it is. But I do appreciate the effort that you're going to put forth in that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Smith family, good night.
Good
good
night.
night.
Good night. Thank you.
You know what? You know, we didn't ask for any public comment at this point in time. We probably, even though we've made some decisions here, I think we probably, I'm sorry, I'm remiss here. We probably should just put it out to the public just for a moment to see if anybody has any comments in regard to this application at this point in time. Once again, you can call in using one of the numbers on the screen and put in the Zoom meeting ID number, and you'll come right on to us. So if anybody has any comments, of course, as indicated, this application will be carried over to next month's meeting. We'll just give it a minute to see if anybody has anything to say.
Okay, Chairman, I don't have anybody trying to get in.
Okay, so now we're going to finally adjourn this matter. Okay, thank you to the applicant, and we will see you next month.
Thank you.
Okay. Last item we have on the agenda this evening is the approval of the April 2021 meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to read those minutes?
Yes.
Yes,
I think I'm just going to approve by consensus. Any changes or issues, concerns with the meeting minutes?
No.
nope,
Okay. All in favor of approval?
aye,
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Nope. Okay. The minutes for the April 2021 meeting have been approved. Last thing I'll just make mention of, our next meeting is June 15th, 2021. Denise, is that meeting date confirmed? Usually we're second Tuesday in June, but we're.
Yeah, so because of COVID and the Zoom meetings, you know, we kept it as our regular June third Tuesday, you know, third Tuesday.
Third
And
Tuesday of every month, right?
Yeah, and we don't anticipate that we'll be able to meet in public by then. And if we do, I will work with Paul and we'll make arrangements to meet in the recreation center, but I don't anticipate that happening.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So next meeting is third Tuesday in June, June 15th. We're expecting to be on Zoom once again, and we'll continue then. Denise, other than this application we know that's carried over, any other applications you have for next month's meeting we should be aware of?
Yeah, I do. I have an application for another renewal of a special exception use permit for a new owner. COVID really, a lot of people moved, a lot of real estate action. So, and then we also have an application for a resident in Somers Chase, to extend their deck. And they have permission from the HOA to do that. So those are the two applications I have right now.
Is that side or rear yard setbacks? Is that what we're looking at there? For the deck?
Yes, the side yard setback it'll be.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you.
All right.
All right, thank you. Any other issues, any other matters any member would like to discuss? Concerns? Nope.
I'm good.
Okay. So if there's no further business, I think we're going to wrap up the meeting. Everyone have a good night, and we'll try to get paperwork to you regarding town council's opinion before the next meeting and the other paperwork as we normally see. And we'll see everybody next month.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.